Well, the Hobart City Council has been forced to apologise to one of its councillors, Louise Elliot. Last year, Councillor Elliot tried to book a room to host a public meeting featuring women's rights campaigners Catherine Deves and Moira Deeming, who are both well known. The council moved to deny her access to this public meeting space, which is normally available for anyone in the public to hire. Councillor Elliot joins me now from Hobart. Louise, thanks so much for your time. Why were you denied the right to host a public meeting in a public facility?
Yeah, it really is quite an absurd situation. I lodged a venue booking application, like you've said, for a free speech and women's rights event. And from there, my understanding is now, several months later and a whole lot of RTI, right to information request information later, I understood that they received that request and they immediately had some sort of fear about that event going ahead, and a scheme was concocted for me to be lied to about the availability of the venue so that I couldn't make the booking. So I guess in answer to your question, the reason I was blocked was because they were fearful of a women's rights and free speech event, which is obviously outrageous.
So this was because you wanted to have a discussion with Catherine and Moira, open to the public, that could talk about how males identifying as females were encroaching on girls' and women's space and their sport, those sort of issues.
Yes, that's right. So there's been a group of us, including Catherine and Moira and Sal Grover, Gillian Spencer and others, who have been speaking in various parliament houses around Australia over the past year or so. I struggled to get somebody in our Tasmanian Parliament to sponsor us to be in Parliament House. So the next option was for us to look to the Hobart Town Hall. So yeah, our event would have been around women coming together with an audience and being able to talk about why female-only sports and spaces are important. Spaces like change rooms, prisons and shelters, which have an obvious need to be female-only. And of course in sport, which we're seeing every day, the importance of female-only sport. We wanted to come together and talk about the importance of that, and also, ironically, share our experience with being cancelled and ostracised for speaking out about this. And the irony is absolutely not lost on me. It really is shameful that the exact issue we wanted to talk about actually occurred for the event that we were intending to hold.
It's outrageous, Louise. I just can't believe this is happening in Australia. I mean, I grew up in what I thought was a free country, and freedom of speech was a value. I, like you, have served in local government, and when I was a councillor, we were encouraged to use the City Hall meeting rooms for public meetings. The idea that an elected person seeking to hold a public meeting on an issue of public interest can be cancelled like this and obstructed is just un-Australian. The Hobart City Council Mayor herself was involved. It's public that she was sending text messages to the well-known LGBTIQA+ political activist Rodney Croome. Something nefarious was afoot here, wasn't it?
Yes, it's all come out in the wash just how many layer upon layer upon layer of issues there are in here. So we have the blatant discrimination and the concocting of schemes and lies by multiple people. Then we also have privacy breaches, as you've spoken about there, text messages, phone calls, emails between the Mr. Croome, the Lord Mayor and the former Hobart CEO. But the thing is that this really radiates. So I even took a step back with this. I applied to hold the event in my personal capacity. So what happened to me could happen to anybody else, which is why I've taken this as far as I need to, because I do believe in true diversity and inclusion. And that includes obviously not just things like race and skin colour and age and disability and sexuality, but also political belief and political activity. I should have been allowed to hold our event, and I think the culture that's facilitated this behaviour is absolutely radiated from the very top of the council. Yeah. It might have been employees involved in the frontline blocking behaviour, but the culture that facilitated it has come from the very top, and that's clearly the case when you've got the Lord Mayor of the Hobart Council breaching privacy principles in sharing my personal information and my personal intentions in my personal capacity to multiple people outside of the organisation. So it's a disgusting situation.
It sure is, Louise. So what brought them to the point then where they have now agreed to apologise? I'm sure they haven't been brought to the table willingly.
This is the thing. I'm a persistent person, and you need to be, I think, to get accountability. Other people, I suspect, many others would have quite rightly probably turned away and thought, oh, well, that's that. But I knew when I put that booking in that something was awry. I'm not stupid. I have a good sense of intuition. And unfortunately, my fears had turned out to be completely right. But between then and now, I used our right to information process, the FOI type process, to apply for all correspondence and information related to my intended booking. And that application was initially rejected twice. It wasn't until I got the Tasmanian Ombudsman involved that my application was actually processed. Then what happened is I was given a bunch of safe emails, I guess you could call it, the boring stuff. And then a whistleblower came forward when I made it clear that I knew this, I had a sense that this wasn't all of the information, stuff was being withheld. Whistleblower came forward, and then the floodgates opened. That's when all of this information and everything that I had been gaslit about for months, made to feel paranoid that this discrimination was all in my head, it was made up. I've got emails where I'm being lambasted for making the sort of accusations that I was and feeling the way that I was, that something was awry. All of that has been proven to be true. So what my fear is that if I hadn't have been able to access that information through RTI, accountability would never have been served and justice denied.
Well, good on you for being persistent. Now, these Let Women Speak events, they were occurring last year. Of course, there was that famous one on the steps of the Victorian Parliament House where a bunch of neo-Nazis gate crashed. Moira Deeming was involved. John Pesutto, the Liberal leader there, slurred her and Kelly J. Keane and Angie Jones as associates of Nazis, put out a dossier. He's since settled with Kelly J and with Angie, but has refused to apologise to Moira. Moira's only got one recourse left, and that's to sue for defamation to try and clear her name and to clear her family's name. She's got young children now that she doesn't want them to think that their mother is a Nazi sympathiser. What would be your message to John Pesutto and others who have sought to try and shut down you and Moira, Catherine and others who have sought to raise these important issues?
My message would be to Mr. Pesutto to own your egregious error. You've made a massive mistake. It's not too late. You need to apologise genuinely and profusely for that, and to realise that the implications of that sort of behaviour, because it actually feels to me like since what happened to Moira, it's now been that sort of tone has spread that it's okay to do that sort of thing, and it's not okay. I'm fortunate, but to a much lesser extent, I've experienced similar down here in my own council. I've had my picture posted on Twitter by a fellow councillor saying this is how you treat Nazis. And another councillor has done a similar sort of thing, referred to me as being involved with right-wing extremists. But what happens to Moira is disgusting. It's not too late to end that, but I hope and I fully support Moira taking this as far as she needs to, because name-calling really is the ultimate gutter tactic. Everyone needs to understand that there are diversity in views, and Moira did absolutely nothing wrong. And Mr. Pesutto needs to take a long, hard look at himself and fix the situation. What he's done to the Liberal brand, I must admit, is appalling. I do recall right at the time, I personally sent Mr. Pesutto one of, I'm sure, thousands of emails saying, as someone with really strong Liberal values, how disgusted I am and what an appalling reflection he is on the Liberal Party of Victoria and sadly, Liberal more broadly.
Well, well said. Councillor Louise Elliot, thanks for being such a persistent warrior for freedom of speech and for girls' and women's rights. Congratulations on this win. There's too few wins from those of us who care about these issues, and we appreciate your being in the fight and giving of your time today. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Well, just when common sense has started to break out in Australia's mind-numbingly frustrating energy debate, the Liberal and National Turnbullite moderates have reared their heads again. Nationals leader David Littleproud, who up until now has been a zealot for climate action, right up there with the best of the Greens, has pivoted and is now calling for a transition to zero emissions nuclear power that bypasses large-scale renewable projects, which of course don't work and only wreck the environment. This has been refreshing to see. It's been clear to anyone looking at the economics and engineering that windmill factories on ridgelines and solar farms on farmland, that they cannot provide the electricity needed to reliably and affordably power economies like Australia. And it's great to see David Littleproud realising this. This is why Peter Dutton and the Coalition are taking nuclear energy to the next election. It is a huge shift in the debate and one desperately needed because Anthony Albanese and Chris Bowen's mad rush to renewables is wrecking the economy, it's wrecking household electricity bills, and it's wrecking the environment. If net zero is important, the only way to get there is through a coal to gas to nuclear transition. Littleproud's public stating of this week is about 5 years too late, but better late than never. But as soon as the obvious is stated, the so-called Liberal moderates like Senator Simon Birmingham swing into action on cue. Contradicting Littleproud, Birmingham said there was, quote, absolutely a place for large-scale renewables as part of a technology-neutral approach and that they are an important part of the mix. Now, of course, we know that windmills and solar panels can't provide affordable and reliable electricity. We need gas and solar, and if we're going to get to net zero, it's got to be a gas to nuclear transition. But Birmingham still wants to have large-scale renewables in the mix, which is futile in my view. Now, to make matters worse, the Queensland opposition leader, David Crisafulli, also contradicted Dutton's nuclear push and said if he was elected Premier, he would not support lifting the ban on nuclear energy in Queensland. Crisafulli also backs the Labor Green legislated target of reducing Queensland's emissions by 75% over the next decade. They can't explain how they will cost that or how that will work from an engineering point of view to keep the lights on. Now, this, of course, has massive ramifications for Queensland's beef sector. Of course, beef cattle emit lots of CO2. Vote LNP, get the Greens, is the message that Crisafulli is giving. Now, the amusing thing is that politicians like Birmingham and Crisafulli are called moderate Liberals. That is, of course, a joke. People who support policies driven by extreme green climate alarmism and global boiling myths are not moderates, they are extremists. They are extremely damaging to your electricity bill. Australia's electricity policy, as every householder knows, is a disaster. That Dutton and Littleproud are seeking to put some common sense back into the debate and possibly pull us back from this disaster is welcome. I just hope it's not too late. But before Dutton fights the Green, Teal, Labor juggernaut, he will have to fight the Turnbullite misnamed moderates in his own ranks. The climate wars are on again, and they need to be. How much you pay for electricity, and indeed whether you have reliable electricity at home or for jobs-creating industry, is all at stake at the upcoming federal election. This is the debate we have to have.